Some nights feel longer than others. Not because of the ticking clock, but because of the silence between each tick, the kind that echoes more than it fades. You lie there staring at the ceiling, trying to replay what went wrong, but the truth is, it never started right. You just didn't want to admit it. You gave too much, listened too well, softened every sharp edge inside yourself just to be easier to love. And still, they left. Maybe not all at once. Some leave in parts. First their curiosity, then their laughter, then the way they used to look at you when you spoke about something that mattered. You remember thinking, if I can just be better, maybe they'll stay. But they didn't. And somewhere along the way you forgot something sacred. You never had to earn the right to be treated with care. This isn't a story about heartbreak. It's a story about waking up. About remembering the self you once abandoned in the name of connection. The version of you that didn't shrink to fit someone else's comfort. The version that moved through life quietly, but with gravity. Stoicism doesn't tell you to stop feeling. It teaches you how to feel with intention. It's not about being cold. It's about staying warm in a world that can be careless. And if you've ever been made to feel like you're too much or not enough, Stoicism offers you a mirror. One that doesn't distort, doesn't judge. It simply reflects. What if the reason they couldn't love you right had nothing to do with how lovable you were? What if your silence wasn't emptiness, but wisdom unspoken? You don't need to scream to be heard by the right person. You don't need to contort your spirit into someone else's ideal. You are not here to audition for a place in someone's life. You are here to live. But here's the hard part. Healing often starts in solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude. That quiet room inside you that no one else can enter. The one you've avoided because it holds too many questions and not enough answers. And yet, that's where you'll find your peace again. Not through them. Not through their apology. Not even through closure. Just through stillness. So tonight, or whenever you find this, let this be a turning point. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a quiet shift. A choice to begin valuing yourself not in response to how others treat you, but in defiance of it. Because you are not a backup plan. You are not a placeholder. You are not someone's almost. You are whole, even if you don't feel like it yet. Even if part of you still wants to believe that if you were just a little more patient, a little less guarded, they would have stayed. Let go of the fantasy that pain makes you noble. Let go of the illusion that suffering earns you love. Love, real love, doesn't require you to disappear. And if no one has told you this lately, it is okay to walk away from what doesn't grow you. It is okay to want peace more than passion. It is okay to protect your quiet. Because your stillness is not a weakness. It is your sanctuary. So breathe, not the kind of breath you take when you're preparing to explain yourself again, but the kind of breath that says, I'm done abandoning myself. You don't owe anyone an apology for reclaiming your worth, and you don't need permission to rebuild the parts of yourself that you gave away too quickly. If something in this made you pause, perhaps you're already on your way back home. Welcome, you're not alone here. You're listening to Silent Sage Stories, where thoughts become lighter and your voice returns to you in whispers. If this story touched something inside you, leave a like to anchor it. Subscribe to journey deeper. And when you're ready, share this with someone else who's still trying to remember their worth. Let's walk gently into what comes next. There's a quiet erosion that happens when you forget yourself in the presence of someone else. Not all at once, but gently, like water carving stone. You say yes when you mean no. You smile when you're aching. You shrink just a little so they feel bigger, so they stay. You tell yourself it's just compromise, that this is what love is, that bending isn't breaking. Until one day you don't recognize the shape you've become. There's a moment, maybe, in the mirror. Maybe in the middle of a conversation that feels scripted, where a part of you whispers, "This isn't me." And the silence that follows isn't peaceful. It's the sound of identity in exile. We grow up learning how to fit in, how to be liked, how to smooth over the parts of us that feel too sharp for the world. But no one teaches us how much it costs to keep sanding ourselves down for approval. There is nothing noble in disappearing for someone else's comfort. There is no trophy for the best performance in a role you never auditioned for. And yet how many of us play that part? There's something deeply human in wanting to be chosen, in wanting someone to look at all your chaos and stay. But if staying requires you to abandon the very core of who you are, what exactly is being loved? A mask, a placeholder, an illusion. You were not born to be convenient. You were born to be whole. When you sacrifice your emotional well-being for someone else's temporary peace, you're not loving them. You're enabling a dynamic that tells both of you, my pain is more acceptable than your discomfort. That's not intimacy. That's self-betrayal in slow motion. And still, we do it because we're afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of being alone, afraid that if we draw a line, they'll walk away. And maybe they will. But here's the hard truth wrapped in gentleness. If your peace is the price of their presence, they were never meant to stay. You don't owe anyone access to your joy. You don't have to explain why your soul deserves rest. You're allowed to protect what keeps you steady. And in the middle of all this noise, when you've given so much that you don't even know what enough looks like anymore, there's a truth waiting patiently for you to remember it. Your life is not a gift to be negotiated. It's a presence to be honored. Honor it. Stop choosing partners who require you to dim your light just so they don't feel overshadowed. Stop explaining your softness to people who mistake it for weakness. Stop showing up for someone who disappears when you need them most. Because here's the thing, no one likes to say out loud. Some people only love the version of you that benefits them. They love the support, the attention, the availability, but not the boundaries. Not the parts that say I matter too. And when those parts start speaking, they vanish. They call you difficult. They say you've changed. But you haven't changed. You've returned to your voice, to your standards, to your breath. And that scares people who only knew how to love you on their terms. There's no shame in realizing that some relationships were built on silence. That they only stood because you kept holding your tongue, biting back your needs, laughing at things that weren't funny, crying alone, so no one would feel burdened. But now you know better. So here's another truth. The people who truly love you will never ask you to disappear. They won't flinch at your fullness. They won't fear your depth. They won't compete with your dreams or punish you for your standards. They will sit beside you in stillness, not needing to fill every moment with performance. They will meet your honesty with presence, not punishment. They will let you be as you are, not as they need you to be. And while we're here, let's talk about the people who were there before the relationship. The friends you stopped texting, the family you grew distant from, the parts of your life that made you feel anchored before someone new arrived and became your only gravity. You didn't mean to drift. It happened slowly. One missed dinner turns into several. One unread message becomes silence. And soon the people who once held your story gently no longer recognize the way your voice sounds when it's tired. But you remember now, don't you? What it feels like to laugh without trying, to be seen without strategy, to be loved without negotiation. Those people didn't leave. They waited. Not because they had to, but because that's what love does. It holds space without demand. So if this is the part where you're thinking of calling someone back, of saying, I'm sorry I left, know this. You don't have to explain everything. Just start where you are, with presence, with sincerity, with softness. Let the people who still love you see the version of you that's learning how to love themselves again. And if you feel a quiet ache while hearing this, a grief not for someone else, but for the parts of yourself you gave up, you're not broken. You're just finally feeling what you've been too tired to feel for a long time. That's what healing sounds like. So take one small step back toward your center. One breath, one boundary, one brave word. You don't have to rush, you just have to return. If something here reminded you of a piece of yourself you've been missing, tap like to mark the moment. Subscribe if you're ready to explore what comes next. And when you're ready, reach out to someone who once held your light when you couldn't. We're just getting started. And this time, you don't have to go alone. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't wait for silence. It visits in the middle of a crowded room, or when someone is lying next to you but already drifting elsewhere. You try to hold on, not because they're right for you, but because being alone feels heavier than being unseen. And so you stay. You excuse the distance, reinterpret the red flags as flaws to love through, convince yourself that if you just prove your worth again, they'll remember why they chose you in the first place. But deep down you know, they stopped choosing you long before you noticed. Still, the fear of solitude is louder than the pain of staying. It's strange, isn't it? How we build palaces out of our pain and then lock ourselves inside them just to avoid the echo of our own voice. We treat aloneness like a diagnosis, not a doorway. But what if solitude isn't emptiness? What if it's sacred, a space where the noise fades and your own heartbeat becomes audible again? When you chase connection from a place of lack, you will always settle for fragments. You'll convince yourself that someone who only shows up halfway is better than nothing. But that math will always fail, because nothing is better than something that costs your peace. And yet, many of us mistake obsession for love. We say we're just really into them, but really we're addicted to the idea of being chosen, of being enough, of finally escaping the narrative that we are too much to handle or too little to keep. But obsession is not devotion, it's desperation disguised as desire. When someone becomes the axis around which your world spins, you lose the gravity that keeps you grounded. Their moods dictate your days, their absence writes your stories, their silence becomes your inner dialogue. That's not romance, that's surrender. You are not meant to orbit someone else's chaos. You are a sun, not a satellite. And still we chase. We check our phones. We reread old messages. We analyze the tone of a hey as if it holds divine insight. Because we're afraid, not just of losing them, but of meeting ourselves in the mirror of their absence. But solitude isn't a punishment, it's an invitation. An invitation to come back to yourself, to reclaim the parts you outsourced, to build a life so full of depth and peace that anyone who enters it must come correct or not at all. And when that quiet comes, don't fill it too quickly. Let it stretch. Let it breathe. Let it show you who you are without the performance of being needed. It's in this stillness that something sacred happens. You stop auditioning. You stop explaining. You stop begging love to find you. Instead, you find yourself. And in that rediscovery, you'll notice how much you once revealed to people who never earned it. How quickly you shared your scars like trophies. How readily you made confessions out of your pain, hoping someone would cradle it gently. But not everyone is a safe place. Not everyone deserves your story. Your past is not a password. It's not proof of your worthiness. It's not a loyalty test. Sometimes we overshare because we want to skip the wait. We want to be seen now, loved now, understood now, but vulnerability without discernment is self-sabotage wearing sincerity's clothes. There's power in restraint, not from fear, but from wisdom. Not everyone who listens deserves your voice. Not everyone who stays deserves your trust. Your wounds are sacred ground. Treat them as such. Speak not to be rescued, but to be known. And when someone shows you that they are not yet capable of holding your softness without dropping it, believe them. You don't owe anyone your deepest pages on the first read. Let them earn the footnotes before they see the whole book. And in that patience, in that quiet trust in your own timing, you'll discover a peace far deeper than the validation of being understood. You'll begin to understand yourself, without apology, without rush. This is what it means to become whole again. Not to be invulnerable, but to be deliberate. To choose when and how your story is shared and with whom. To know that your past is not baggage, it's architecture. Not everyone gets to tour it. So if you've ever felt ashamed for being alone, don't be. If you've ever mistaken longing for love, Pause. If you've ever given your heart to someone who didn't even bring open hands, breathe. You are not broken. You are learning. Learning how to wait without wilting, how to be seen without shouting, how to belong to yourself first. And if that's where you are right now, unraveling, reflecting, reclaiming, know this. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're right on time for your return. If something in this felt too close, maybe that's where the healing begins. Tap like to honor what you're feeling. Subscribe if you're ready to keep walking this quiet road back to yourself. And if you know someone who gives too much too soon, share this with them. Sometimes the gentlest truths are the ones we whisper to each other in the dark. Let's keep whispering. Let's keep going. Time is not a resource. It's a relationship. And some of us are in abusive ones with our own hours. We give them away like spare change. To conversations we don't care about. To people who don't ask how we're doing unless they need something. To relationships where we are more useful than loved. And we convince ourselves this is generosity. That saying yes is what good people do. But too many yeses will hollow you out. Too many yeses and suddenly your days no longer feel like your own. What happens when your time no longer reflects your values, but someone else's needs? What happens when you spend years watering gardens that were never meant to grow? You get tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. The kind that makes you question if you've ever really lived for yourself at all. There's a secret no one tells you. Time isn't just something you spend, it's something you shape. And every time you say yes to what doesn't align you, say no to what might have healed you. So let me ask you gently, who taught you that your time wasn't sacred? Who made you believe that peace must be earned by pleasing everyone in the room? This is not a life you audition for. You are not a concierge for other people's comfort. You are not a placeholder. You are not a name on call waiting to be summoned into usefulness. You were born with permission to choose what matters, to choose what aligns, to choose who gets the most sacred hours of your day. And sometimes choosing yourself means disappointing others. Let them be disappointed. Let them feel the absence of your yes. Let them reckon with your boundaries, with your silence, with your refusal to perform. Because if your presence is only appreciated when it's convenient, was it ever truly valued? There is nothing selfish about reclaiming your time. There is nothing cruel in honoring your rhythm. And still many of us say yes to things we hate just to keep the peace. We smile while our insides shake. We nod while our dreams dim. Why? Because somewhere along the way we were told that nice is more important than honest. That being easy to be around is more valuable than being authentic. But here's the truth. Compliance is not kindness, and silence is not love. There is no medal for tolerating what breaks you. There is no dignity in being agreeable at the cost of your own aliveness. So next time you feel the urge to say yes, pause. Ask yourself, am I agreeing or am I abandoning myself again? Sometimes no is the most loving word you can offer both to others and to yourself. And while we're here, let's talk about something heavier. Let's talk about what it means to be a man in a world that often confuses masculinity with martyrdom. You were taught to be strong, to endure, to carry, to protect, to fix. But were you ever taught to feel? To break, to weep, to ask for help, to be held without shame. There's a quiet violence in the way boys are taught to become men. Be tough, don't talk too much, don't feel too deeply, don't love too loudly, don't need anyone at ever. And so we armor up, we become fluent in suppression, masters of compartmentalization. We learn how to nod in boardrooms while dying in bedrooms, how to crack jokes with friends while carrying decades of unsaid grief, how to provide without ever feeling provided for. But masculinity, true masculinity, isn't found in Stoicism, misunderstood as silence. It's found in the courage to stay present, especially when it hurts. Being a man isn't about controlling. It's about centering. Being grounded enough to choose integrity over impulse, gentleness over dominance, truth over performance. You don't have to wear a mask to be respected. You don't have to harden just to survive. There is immense strength in tenderness, in saying, "This is who I am, all of me, not just the parts you find useful. And if the world punishes you for it, then the world is wrong, not you. So take back your time. Take back your truth. Take back the version of manhood that lets you be a full human being, one who laughs, who aches, who fears, who tries again. And if that feels unfamiliar, that's okay. You're not starting over. You're just finally starting as yourself. If something here cracked the surface, leave a like to anchor this moment of return. Subscribe to keep walking this slow path of remembering. And if you know someone hiding behind the mask of doing fine, send this to them. Not as a lecture, but as a quiet invitation back to the self they forgot was still waiting. We're not here to perform. We're here to become. Slowly. Fully. Together. It often starts quietly. A small comment that doesn't sit right. A moment where your voice tightens, but you smile anyway. A silence that lingers too long after you say something vulnerable. You tell yourself it's nothing. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You explain it away. They're just tired. They didn't mean it. I'm probably being too sensitive. But deep down, something sharp moves. You feel it. That first crack in the floor beneath your self-respect. Not a collapse. Not yet. Just the tremor. And if you ignore it, if you keep walking across it, pretending it's not there one day, you will fall through. Because the truth is, disrespect rarely arrives with a bang. It drips, slowly. A look here, a tone there, a joke at your expense, a boundary pushed and then blamed on you. And before you realize it, you're apologizing for things that don't need apologies. You're second-guessing your memory. You're holding your breath in your own life. But here's what I need you to hear. Anyone who repeatedly hurts your self-respect, knowing it hurts, is not someone who loves you. Love doesn't require you to flinch. It doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't make you question whether your worth is conditional. And no, they don't have to hit you to break you. Words can carve just as deeply. Neglect can cut just as quietly. You may think, but they have good sides, and they might. Most people do. But good moments don't cancel out patterns. Affection in between disrespect is not redemption. It's confusion. And confusion is not love. It's a trap. So when your gut whispers, something isn't right here, listen. Not to your fear, but to your wisdom. The version of you that's seen this before. That remembers how it ends. That's tired of mistaking intensity for intimacy. The early signs are rarely wrong. We just don't want them to be right. Because seeing the truth means acting on it. And acting on it might mean walking away. And walking away might mean starting over. But you are not starting over from nothing. You are starting over with everything you've learned. You are starting over from a place of clarity. There's a kind of peace that comes not when everything is fixed, but when you finally stop betraying yourself to keep the peace. And yes, leaving hurts, but staying in the wrong place wounds you in ways that take much longer to heal. The world will sometimes tell you that your standards are too high, that your expectations are unrealistic, that you need to be more flexible or more forgiving. But hear me when I say this, your peace is not a luxury, it is a birthright. You are not hard to love. You are hard to manipulate. There's a difference. Don't let anyone convince you to abandon your dignity in exchange for proximity. Don't let anyone train you to accept breadcrumbs and call it a feast. And above all, don't stay somewhere just because you've already stayed too long. There's no refund for wasted time, but there is redemption in choosing yourself again. In choosing silence over screaming. Healing over hostility, depth over drama. You don't have to hate them to walk away. You don't have to explain. You just have to mean it. And when you do, when you finally reclaim the space you gave away, grief may visit. Not just for the person, but for the version of you who thought love meant enduring everything. But that grief is holy. Let it come. It means you're no longer negotiating with what you've outgrown. It means you're free. So protect your peace like it's your last match in a world gone dark. Because in many ways, it is. And the fire you keep alive in yourself, that's the light that will lead you home. If this stirred something you weren't ready to admit, it's okay. Truth has its own timing. Tap like to hold space for the version of you who stayed too long. Subscribe if you're learning how to leave not just places but patterns. And if someone you love needs to hear this, send it to them, not to push, but to remind peace is never too much to ask for. Let's rest here, then keep walking. Healing doesn't look like a sunrise. It looks like a messy room, a half-written journal entry, an unopened message you don't have the energy to answer, a good day followed by 3 hollow ones, a quiet walk where you cry for no reason, and somehow everything changes anyway. But we don't see that part online. We see transformations, glow-ups, before and after, as if healing happens in one grand decision, in one clean cut from pain to peace. It doesn't. Healing is boring, it's unphotogenic, it's full of awkward pauses and tiny wins that no one claps for. But those wins matter. Getting out of bed when everything feels heavy. Making yourself breakfast instead of skipping again. Not texting them when the loneliness peaks at 1:13 a.m. Saying no and not explaining. Saying yes and meaning it. These are victories, not loud ones. Not headline-worthy, but sacred nonetheless. So celebrate them, not because they prove you're done healing, but because they prove you've started. Don't wait for someone else to notice how far you've come. Notice it yourself. You were not built to suffer indefinitely for someone else's learning curve. You are not obligated to stay stuck just because pain has become familiar. You can outgrow your wounds and still remember what they taught you. That's not betrayal. That's evolution. And yet, many of us delay our recovery. We wait for the perfect moment to get better. We imagine a future version of ourselves who is finally ready. Strong enough, clear enough, healed enough to begin again. But here's the truth, you will never feel fully ready. Not for the apology, not for the closure, not for the rebuilding. Because healing doesn't come after you feel strong. Healing makes you strong. And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is to live like someone who deserves peace even if you don't fully believe it yet. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep walking, one small, honest step at a time. There will be days you fall back into old habits, old thoughts, old longing. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. It means your wounds still remember, but that doesn't mean you have to live there. You can acknowledge the past without surrendering to it. You can grieve without going back. You can miss them and still move on. And when the doubt creeps in because it will remember this, you don't need to be chosen to be worthy. Let me say that again. You do not need to be chosen to be worthy. Not being picked, not being kept, not being called back, none of it erases your value. You were whole before they met you. You will be whole long after they forget you. Your worth is not up for negotiation, not with them, not with the world, not even with your own insecurities. You are not someone's missed opportunity. You are your own miracle in motion. So don't wait for closure to close the door. Don't wait for validation to love your reflection. Don't wait for the pain to disappear before you let joy return. You're allowed to feel joy now. Even if you're still healing, especially because you're still healing. And if the world tells you that's too soon, too soft, too self-centered, smile. Let them speak. You're not living for their timeline. You're living for your truth. And your truth is this: you are enough, not when you're fixed, not when you're loved, not when you're impressive. Now, here, exactly as you are. So laugh when the moment invites it. Rest when your body asks. Sing along, even if your voice shakes. Say I'm okay and mean it, even if you also mean I'm still working on it. This is your life. Not a rehearsal, not a preview, but the real thing. It's okay to be soft. It's okay to be unfinished. It's okay to be proud of how far you've come, even if no one else sees it. And if you needed someone to notice, let this be that moment. Let this be your reminder that you are doing better than you think. You're still here, still breathing, still trying, and that is enough. If something here felt like a quiet yes in your chest, tap like to honor that. Subscribe if you're learning how to live in your own rhythm. And share this with someone who's forgotten how far they've come. Someone who needs to hear, you don't need permission to begin again. You just need to begin. We're almost there. Let's exhale together, then finish what we started. Somewhere along this journey, you may have felt something shift. Not loudly, not all at once, just a soft realignment, a breath you didn't know you'd been holding. Finally let go. That's how it begins. Not with fireworks or declarations, but with a quiet return to yourself, to the parts you'd forgotten were still there, still waiting. Maybe this wasn't what you expected. Maybe you thought healing would look like strength, like certainty, like direction. But here's the truth. Real healing feels more like softness. It feels like letting go of the need to be understood, like no longer performing for people who never really saw you, like sitting in your own silence and realizing it doesn't echo anymore. That stillness you feel now, that's not emptiness, that's space. Space you reclaimed from people who took too much, from stories that weren't yours to carry, from versions of you that were never the whole truth. And in that space, something new can grow. Maybe not overnight, maybe not cleanly, but deeply. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of a different chapter. One where your peace isn't negotiable, where your presence isn't conditional, where your worth isn't a question, it's the foundation. You've learned how to say no, how to walk away, how to listen to the quiet instincts that used to be drowned out by need or fear or longing. And even if you still stumble, because you will, there's a difference now. You recognize the stumble. You know how to come back. You don't stay lost as long. That's growth. That's resilience. That's you. So let this closing be a gentle exhale. Not a command, not a challenge, just an honoring of your capacity, of your clarity, of your courage to choose yourself even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are not late. You are here, and that is enough. If you ever forget that, come back to this space. Not because I have answers, but because sometimes we all need to be reminded your softness is strength. Your stillness is wisdom. Your solitude is sacred. So take what resonated. Leave what didn't. Let it settle however it needs to. And when you're ready, step forward. Not because you've healed completely, but because you've remembered who you are. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Truly. Tap, like if this story held a mirror to something inside you. Subscribe if you're ready for more quiet moments like this. And if someone came to mind as you listened, someone who could use this kind of gentleness, send it their way. Not to fix them, just to remind them they're not alone. Until next time, stay soft, stay steady, and stay true to the voice that never needed to shout to be real. You're already on your way, and I'll meet you there, in the quiet.